This episode is sponsored by DS, a team of makers, marketers, and entrepreneurs that help businesses transform their brand experience and unlock growth like never before. Are you a CMO, founder, or business leader looking to level up your brand and marketing? Head over to weareds.com and let's explore what is next for your business. That's weareds.com. Visit us to learn more. Hey, what's going on, entrepreneurs? This is Robert Roach, executive producer for Forward Obsessed. And if you are building businesses, you know that you never have enough resources to get everything done that you need to get done for your new business. All right, and that's why we're proud to say that one of our sponsors is Das Good. That's DAAS Good. Das Good is a done-for-you, creative, on-demand service for entrepreneurs. This is for businesses who need great creative without a huge budget and without a lot of time to focus on it. If you want to get the important things done like pitch decks, awesome branding, incredible websites, but you want to do it without the hassle, without the headaches, without the massive budget, then Das Good is for you. Head over to dasgood.design. That's DAAS good.design. Mention that Forward Obsessed sent you and save $1,000 off of your first month of service. Let us know what you think of them. We're excited to hear about it. And with that, enjoy the show. Remember, stay Forward Obsessed.
Welcome to Forward Obsessed, where we talk to breakthrough business leaders and rising entrepreneurs about their journeys, origin stories, and aha moments.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Forward Obsessed. I'm your co-host, David Salinas. This episode, we had a lot of firsts. It's the first time that I've ever done the episode by myself. My co-host, Peter Senna, couldn't join me. The first time we've brought a guest back, and that guest is Kat Hantas, founder of 21Seeds. In the very beginning of the show, Kat Hantas was in 9 states. Doing well, things would accelerate from there. She would exit the business 3 years later for 9 figures. She takes us on that journey. She's dynamic, full of energy, tons of experience, with a phenomenal story. 21Seeds, Kat Hantas. Be sure to share this episode. Check out our sponsors that support us. Please try and support them, and be sure to subscribe wherever you're hearing or seeing this. Thank you for being Forward Obsessed. I'm out. Hello and welcome to Forward Obsessed. I'm your co-host. Actually, today I'm your host, David Salinas. Pete Senna is currently traveling. This is our first show with only one host. And today we have an incredible guest that just flew in, Kat Hantas. Kat, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Dave.
Where did you fly in from?
San Francisco.
What time did you land?
Early. I think we landed at like 7 o'clock. I did take a little disco nap, though, full confession.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you taking a red eye and joining us right away. We're thrilled to have you. So you are the first guest that we've ever had on the show twice. We had you on the show the first time during COVID when everybody was on lockdown, and it was right at the outset of COVID, and we learned about your business that was thriving and growing. I think at the time you were in 9 states, right? Just to catch everybody up, Kat had a tequila brand. And then after that, I feel like the whole world changed and moved really, really quickly for you. For us as well, we pivoted the show from having great entrepreneurs that were innovative and now have entrepreneurs that have exited companies. And it just so happens that you've done so. So we won't spoil that. I want to go back, do a little bit more rigorous interview with you to start, if that's cool.
I'm ready.
Okay, cool.
And this is the first time we're meeting in person.
And this is the first time we're meeting in person. So it's nice to see you outside of the box.
Yeah, exactly. You're a lot taller than I thought.
Oh, good. That's good. Yeah. So, thank you. I'm definitely taller than inside the little box. And you look great, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you don't look like somebody that just ran a marathon selling a company.
I know. Well, it's been a minute. It's been 2 years now. I mean, time has flown.
It really has.
Yeah,
That's
it's been
incredible.
2 years.
So speaking of time, I want to go back in time. Tell me about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Peru.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I know.
You know I'm Peruvian.
Really? I did not know that. That is bananas. So yeah, I'm my 2 Greek parents.
Okay.
Were in Peru, born there. Nicole, my co-founder. So I have an older sister, a younger sister. My older sister was born there. My mom left my dad, moved back to Greece, and my younger sister was born, who I started the company with, Nicole, who I started 21Seeds with, was born in Greece. So we lived in Greece. And then we moved from Greece to the States when I was 5. So we are absolutely the children, 3 daughters of an immigrant mom, single mom that moved here. And I think that's where like the hustle began.
Why were they in Peru in the first place? I've never heard of Greeks in Peru. I've heard of Chinese in Peru. I've heard of Spanish in Peru, or like from Spain.
I know. Actually, you know what, Dave? You're going to be the first person to ever hear this story. It's an exclusive story. I don't think I've ever told this story, outside the family. But turns out my real father was into some shady stuff. And he was a Greek kid, left Greece when he was a teenager, moved to South America, ended up, kind of all over South America. But like when my mom met him, he was in Peru. And we don't know exactly what he was into, but we do know that when I was at UCLA, we got a call from Interpol that was asking us like, when was the last time we'd seen him and all of this stuff. And obviously we hadn't seen him since she left. So he was, we never did find out what he was into. But they did send us his briefcase. He had died, and that's why they were calling us. We didn't know him at all. So, we got his briefcase and saw some crazy passports of him. He kind of looked different in each picture. It was like, and what was crazy was at the time, I was at UCLA and I was dating a guy whose father was a screenwriter, whose father is a screenwriter still, actually a very famous screenwriter, Eric Roth. Was written, won the Oscar for Forrest Gump, Insider, Ali, Munich. And so, of course, I was in this world of filmmakers, and I was just like, oh my God, we got to go down there and find out what was happening. And my mom's like, we're not doing that.
Make a movie?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. She's like, I left for a reason, and, you don't want to go down there. You go down looking for them, they might come looking for you. So we kind of left it there, but I do have this part of me that wants to know. Now, yeah, who wants to know? Yeah. Anyway, so
you have the resources.
we can do it now. We could do it now. I know. It's been a minute though.
That's an incredible story. So then your mom went back to Greece. She left him.
She left him. Yep. Went back to Greece. Had my younger sister there. So now she was a single mom, 3 girls, at a time when Greece was really small, and it was, it was just sort of, she didn't see much of a future that she could make for herself and for her 3 girls there. So her sister had moved to the States, and she decided to move to Southern California, not far from, in true Greek fashion. Yeah. We all kind of lived near each other. She moved to Southern California, and then that's where, so I moved here when I was 5. I didn't speak the language. I spoke Spanish and Greek. I don't speak Spanish anymore, but I still speak Greek. And just kind of figured it out, learned the language, met friends, and saw how hard my mom was working.
What was she doing?
So she, her very first job, because she spoke Spanish and she knew how to sew, was basically working in a sweatshop.
She was a seamstress.
Yeah, in LA. And we would, we went to public schools, my older sister and I, Nicole, who again is co-founder in 21Seeds. She was little, so she was at the daycare in the shop, and she, that's what she could do. She made money. She was able to pay, our mortgage. She bought us a house, and then she kind of quickly moved her way up. She spoke Spanish. She went into, into a doctor's office, and then ultimately she worked her way up and became a mortgage broker. And moved us into a better neighborhood.
She was
and
just hustling, chasing
constantly
what she could do.
Constantly. It was credit card shuffle, figuring out how to, take from this to pay this. And
how transparent was she with you as to what was going on in the family and in the finances?
Very transparent. We were fully aware that, her thing was always to put us in the best neighborhood she could put us in so that we could get the best education that we could get. But we were very aware that we had the least amount of money in that neighborhood. I remember in elementary school, we were on a program where we would go and get a chip and be able to like get lunch from that chip.
Hot lunch chip.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So just always aware of it. But it was like, we saw how hard she was working. And so it wasn't like, there was this sense and that everybody had to work hard. We all had chores. Like we had chores from the beginning. Everybody was pitching in. Exactly. But that did sort of inform like the path that, the expectation was like you were going to do really well in school. The way out was to do well in school and then go and get on a track, right? So like, are you going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant?
Yeah, well, at least you have the accountant. My father was like, 2 jobs, doctors and lawyers.
Right, exactly. And so, if you're good at math, you're the accountant. And that's Nicole. Like my sister was, again, she was our CFO and COO at 21Seeds. So, and she went on that path. I was pre-med at UCLA. Like I got into UCLA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Nicole, my sister, also went to UCLA. And I was pre-med. But while at UCLA, I met Josh, right, whose father was the screenwriter. So I got introduced to this whole world of filmmaking, and I didn't even know that it was a thing, like that you could do that. And that was never an opportunity that anyone in my family ever talked about, right? Because it was always like doctor, lawyer, accountant. And so that's when I first was exposed to that industry. That's not where I went right away after college. But there was something in me that always just sort of felt like, oh, this is what I have to do one of these things. I love science. Like I love medicine and science. I just didn't love it enough to become a doctor. But even now, like if I'm listening to something, the most recent book I read was Ultra Processed People. Like I'm obsessed with wellness, and that's always been a thing in throughout like my life, and really part of what prompted me creating 21Seeds.
Okay,
a big part of it was that actually.
We'll come back.
Yeah,
I love that. Well, we'll come back to that. I want to go back a little bit, like how. So being the poorest kid in the neighborhood, watching your mom hustle, looking back at that now, like, do you think that shaped your ambition?
100%. Yeah, like 100%. The first thing is that, for us, like we saw this, our mom, she was out there hustling. She was making everything happen for us, right? Like anything that was positive that was happening in our life was being created and generated by her.
Yeah.
So that was huge for us, right? Because here we are, 3 girls. We're all entrepreneurially minded. Even my older sister was as well. Like she went on to try to start a business. It ended up failing. She ended up working with us, but like she tried it, right? Like that was that seed of being an entrepreneur and trying to like
self-made
better yourself was planted very young, and we saw it in action. I mean, that's the best, is a good role model like that.
Did she make you have jobs when you were kids?
We had chores. Like we definitely had chores. But to your point, like I was a pretty good athlete. I probably could have played, basketball in college, but I definitely wanted to make money.
Yeah.
Like I was very driven and wanted to like improve our lives, my life, like have independence, you know. So of course, it's naively and kind of dumbly, stupidly, I ended up getting like a part-time job in high school instead of like focusing on basketball, which I should have done in retrospect. And then I could have
starting businesses.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was pulling weeds, with one of my best friends when we were like 6. You were selling weeds. I was pulling weeds. Any way to like make up money. I was always thinking about like, what could the business be? What could the business be?
Opportunity.
Exactly. Always obsessed with it. I love talking about business, even to this day. Like it's my favorite subject. Some people want to go shopping and buy clothes, or they want to, dream about vacations. Like I love talking about business. If I meet somebody, I'm like, tell me everything about your business. I want to pull it apart.
Yeah, no, it's a form of, it's one of those things. My father said, be a doctor, be a lawyer. Indian families say, be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer.
Yeah.
I fancy myself as an engineer, but I'm more of a business engineer. Right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone yesterday about like, what are the roles you must have in a company and to start a really good company? And I said, a financial engineer, right? Not a CFO, but somebody that's, because there's different levels, but like a financial engineer is really wicked with debt and leverage and cash flow and all that kind of stuff. A relationship engineer, someone that's really good at building relationships. And what was the third person that I had in there?
product.
Operational ninja.
Yeah, an operational. Yeah,
or a product.
Yeah.
In your business, that would make total sense. But yeah, I love that, and it shows through. Where was your first exposure to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, if at a very, very basic level, I remember the youth employment service at our library when I was like, in sixth grade. You could go there and basically like almost like really start your own business in that, like, and then for us it was, cleaning people's houses, weeding, and babysitting. But you managed it yourself. You found your own clients. Like you would reach out to people. You would post your listings and all that stuff. I mean, like you were driving your own business, and I loved that. I loved that. And then I was like, okay, now I want to make purses. So I was always sort of thinking like, what could we do to just make money? Like, even if it was like a couple bucks, it wasn't in the beginning, it was like tiny, but officially though, I would say, I really got the bug when I was at UCLA and coming out of college, right? Because I graduated in 95 and that was right around the time of the birth of the internet, like as we know it. And UCLA was like a real hub of that. The computer science people there were like at the forefront of that. And my boyfriend then, this guy, Josh Roth, he was a computer science major. So he knew how to like program a website, and it was all very new. Like there was no Google then, right? It was,
no, 95. I mean, you're early.
Super, super early. And what I realized was, okay, I had looked for an apartment while I was at UCLA, and everyone was looking for apartments, and it was really quite inefficient. You either had to walk around, or they had these like free magazines that you could grab, and it had like maybe one photo. Most of the time it was just the listing. Yeah. And so I thought, wow, you can put all this information up on the web, and it's good for everybody, right? Like for me as a person looking for an apartment, I get to see the whole apartment. I can see the inside and all of that. I know all the amenities, everything. And then for these guys who are paying, $1,500 for, a picture ad in one of these free magazines, you could do that for $15 instead of $1,500, right? So, and endless ads. So I was like, oh, we should start an apartment rental guide for college and just focus on the college market. That was it. Like stay super focused, apartment rentals, for college kids, and just literally start with the leads would be the people advertising in this magazine that makes no sense.
I'm sure half of the people listening to this right now are going, that is a genius business model.
Totally. And it was back at the time, it was nobody was doing, there was nothing. So we started a company, it was called Rentals Online, right?
1996,
right after I graduated.
Super early. Pre-dot-com bust, the whole thing.
Yeah, because at this point I had decided I wasn't going to go to medical school anymore. Mm-hmm. And
Mom okay with that?
No. She was like, short leash, you go try this thing, this business, and if it doesn't work out, you got to get a job, right? If you're not going to go to medical school, get a job, or go back to school, go back to medical school. Don't be stupid. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, but I didn't feel the pressure though. I know she was saying that to me, but I was just sort of like, I don't think I'm ever going to go to medical school. So hopefully this works. But at that time, not everyone even had the internet. Like people didn't. There was no even AOL, right? There were no accounts, so most people didn't have internet access at home. So we went around. We would go into developers, right, who had multiple units and try to pitch. So we weren't going. We thought, okay, instead of going door to door, let's go to the guys that have 1,500 units and go to those guys. And also go to the guys that were advertising in the magazine, obviously, right, as our leads. And a lot of those guys owned a lot of units. So we went to them and they're like, well, how are people going to go on the internet? I don't have those guys didn't even have the internet.
Access.
Right. And so we said, well,
double-sided marketplace, but one marketplace.
Well, we kind of lied a little bit. We were like, we have this deal at Kinko's, right? And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, kind of fake it till you make it. Yeah. So we're like, listen, because you could go to Kinko's and you could pay to go on the internet.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, we have this deal with Kinko's, and we're like, if they buy into this, then we'll just go make this deal happen at Kinko's.
Remember that? Computer cafes?
Exactly.
Paid money to get on the internet?
Exactly. So we're like, there are Kinko's everywhere, right? So like massive distribution. There were Kinko's everywhere, certainly in every college town, and that was who we were going after. So we were like, look, we have this deal with Kinko's, so people know that they can go in there and, search for these apartment rentals through, at a Kinko's. And so our thinking was like, if everybody buys into this idea, then we'll go to Kinko's and just make a deal where we like pay them, like the fee if somebody wants to come in and search. So we were going to like back into it somehow. We hadn't really thought it through. But we were just like, look, these are all of the people that are involved. And if we can just get everybody like sort of, buying into the concept, then we know that there's a market here, and then we can run with it. But they were very suspicious. They're like, well, we're not sure about this internet thing. We don't know if it's gonna, if it's gonna last. Like, we're just not sure. And so it was really a bummer. It was a great lesson. We got many no's, which actually then really trained me for the next industry I went to, which was the movie industry.
So what was your biggest lesson in that?
In that one? Well, that one, what we should have done then is, rather than just, once we ran out of money, we just gave up, right? We just were like, okay, we've run out of money. We don't know how to raise money. We don't know how you would even, like, what you even need to raise money. And back then you couldn't just Google it, right? Like now you can Google anything, which was what we did with 21Seeds. I Googled so much with 21Seeds.
Could you imagine how much of a beast you'd be right now?
Oh my
God. College, starting a company.
Oh, it would be so much easier, right? Like back then you'd have to ask somebody, you had to like really use your network, to connect with people. If you wanted to know an investment banker who could help you raise money, like you got to find somebody who knows an investment banker, or you have to know an investment banker yourself.
But back then, a naive Greek.
Yeah. So we were just like, we were like, okay, we have no more money. We don't know how to raise money. But I wish, the thing I learned there is you're going to fail. Like there's going to be something that, derails you. You can't just give up then. You have to like take a step back, figure out a short-term solution while you figure out the long-term solution. Right. And then, and so anyway, and the bummer was shortly after we failed, then the internet started to pick up.
Yeah.
And the same people we had reached out to started calling us and saying, hey, we'd like to advertise on that. And so we just missed it. Like we just missed the window. If only we'd been able to raise, some money to like bridge it.
Yeah.
So that would have been my first exit.
It would have been.
No,
it definitely would have been. Especially because you were that early.
So
you would have likely got out before the .com bust.
100%.
The lesson that I pulled from that, as soon as I read it in the show notes, is like one of the most famous lessons I learned early in my career, which is timing matters.
Oh yeah. When
you look at like the what makes a business, you have, we talk about this on the show a lot. We talk about jockey and horse, right? Like bet on the jockey, not on the horse. There's an element of timing and luck to business in general, and timing really matters. I've seen in my career people that were brilliant, that had incredible ideas, but they were too early, right? Like a mobile app before mobile really stuck is too early. A social commerce, which is like TikTok shops and Instagram shops, are all hot now, but mobile commerce, a social commerce, I actually know the first guy that went after social commerce. They raised $6 million and failed spectacularly, but the idea was a gem and you knew it, but the world wasn't ready for it. Timing is such a big part of business. Speaking of business, since you love business stories, when I was in college, one of the founders that went to my college was the guy that founded Subway, not the doctor, the other guy.
Okay.
What's his name? I can't remember his name at the moment. But he wrote a book about these weird business starts, because Subway was actually an accident. He was just looking for a summer job in college, and Dr. Buck was like, I'll back you, we'll open a deli. And then the deli did great in the summer, failed in the winter, didn't do anything in the winter, and he wanted to give up the business. And the Dr. Buck was like, no, we're going to open another one, and another one. And he pushed him. And as a result of this guy telling him what to do, he wound up becoming very, very wealthy, and obviously this prolific brand. But in the book, he talks about all these other brands that were like accidental millionaires.
Yeah.
And one of them was Kinko's.
Oh, wow.
Just to bring it full circle.
Yeah, no, totally.
The guy had a learning disability, And so his job, you can imagine someone with a really bad learning disability, he came up with the idea to make copies for people in a garage. And he had a copier in a garage, and he went around to businesses and he just said, hey, do you need copies? I'll make your copies for you, and you could pay me. And that's how Kinko's became a thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just like accidental, again, timing.
Yep.
All the right things today.
And you're so right, Dave, about the timing piece. Like that should have been my lesson that I learned. And I don't know that I learned it because I don't know that you like
you learned a lot
the timing. Well, and the timing's just you either have the good timing or you don't. Really, in some ways, you don't know that in that moment you don't realize if it's good timing or not, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I love that story of like Henry Ford back in the day, like of Henry Ford. If you ask somebody, what do you need, they would have said a faster horse, right? And it's like you don't realize that you're this close to having the automobile.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In that moment.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, you're like, oh shoot, I missed it by half a year.
And to your point of like, if you had the right resources and you had the knowledge and you understand, and you would have raised a little bit of money to sustain yourself, then you would have likely had your first exit, which is like Netflix, right? Started in the 90s. Nobody remembers that Netflix started in the 90s.
Right.
And they had so much capital that they sustained through
That's
the
right.
DVD mailing business that everybody thought was crazy.
Right.
But he knew Moore's Law, we're going to get to
That's right.
streaming speeds, and we're going to kill it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. So interesting.
I saw a breakdown the other day. They said if you rented, I forget exactly what it was, but it was like if you rented this many movies at the start of Netflix and had them sent to your house and then paid this much money for your monthly fee to do so, whatever it was. If you took that money over that X amount of years and just invested it in Netflix stock,
Oh my God.
it was worth like $30 million.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's incredible.
That's like something my sister would do. She would do that exercise. Nicole would absolutely do that exercise.
I did it for my father-in-law, and he was that happy about it. So he was like, he bought like the first Tesla, like one of the first Teslas, like 2011.
Yeah.
And, and he still has it, and he loves it. And it's a beautiful car, even though the battery is not as good anymore. So long story short was I went and looked at the day he bought it, and then I put the dollar amount he paid for it, and I looked at the stock, and I said, just so you know, if you put this $111,000 into the stock, it'd be worth $11 million.
Oh my God. Don't do that to him. Don't do that to an immigrant. No.
But he was not an immigrant.
Okay.
He was an immigrant. My father was an immigrant.
Okay.
My father-in-law.
Okay. Oh, his father-in-law. Okay, gotcha. So don't do that.
So that's incredible because rentals online, you're talking about, just for the people that are listening or watching, we're talking about Zillow, we're talking about rent.com, we're talking about LoopNet, we're talking about, really early innovation here. And another thing that I noticed about your story, because what we do on the show now, and I say that to you because you've been on the show before, I love this, is Pete and I ask these questions and go back to the beginning because we're looking for the kernels of entrepreneurship, because we're starting to, after 55 episodes, we're really starting to figure out patterns. And like you, we study and love entrepreneurship. I say I'm the entrepreneurs. I'm like always rooting for people to win. And what I'm noticing about your mom and what she gave you, and then what you started to do, is that you had these were the kernels of becoming a visionary, someone that can spot opportunity. And they say that those people are really hard to find, right? That some people refer to them as like golden gooses, right? And it's clear to me that the youth employment services and learning how to run that little business, and then purses, and then the next thing and the next thing, it's clear to me that you're searching for opportunity. They're like, some people see a door and some people see an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. It's clear to me that your mom's lifestyle, the question is, can it be taught? And I guess it can, right? Because it's clear to me that you became a visionary through these little micro chases that you had in your life that led you to rentalsonline.com, which in 1999, if you made it through the .com, or if you started it in 2002, would probably be $1 billion company.
No, exactly. And to your point about teaching, it's like the best teacher is when you see it, right? Like, and that was the thing with my mom, is that we saw it in action. Yeah. So that's how we learned it. I think that's the way, versus like you teach it in a textbook, then you're not going to learn that. Like, you have to like have it shown to you. So That's the whole thing about like role models are so important. Mentors are so important, you know?
Yeah.
The other thing is that two things that I notice about just how I think about businesses is one is there's always like it's very focused. You know, it wasn't like we were trying to rent to everybody in the world. Like I was like, oh, there's a need for college students in particular. And so it became like, who is my customer? And, you know, why is it, you know, what is the benefit to that customer? Like, why are they going to use this? And it came from like my own experience, having just gone through that process at UCLA of looking for apartments for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And so it was, and that's the piece that oftentimes now when I talk to entrepreneurs, it's like the first thing I ask them is, who's this customer? Because I think there's this misguided notion that everyone's a collector and that everyone's just going to buy everything because it's available.
Yeah,
and like, consumers are not collectors.
Yeah,
you know, they have very limited funds. It's very hard to change their behavior. Very, very hard.
Yeah,
it's very hard. And I think that, you know, a lot of folks that, again, just from the folks that I've been talking to, it's like, everyone's just like, oh, the curious person is my customer. It's like, that's not a customer. That's like, no, that's not a person. And so, we did that with Rentals Online. We obviously failed, but with 21Seeds, it was the same thing. It was like very specific.
Well, even in the movie business, because you went into the movie business for a bit, you make films for specific audiences.
Totally. I wasn't trying to make all the movies, and, you know, and that was part of it when I moved from, you know, LA to New York. I was like, oh, they make very different kinds of movies in New York, and they're very, you know, highbrow, like Academy Award winning stuff. And I was doing like horror movies and music driven movies. And it was really super focused.
Niches.
Yeah, exactly.
Riches in the niches.
Riches in the niches.
You're the queen of that now because you have niched down at the highest level,
exactly.
which makes total sense. And I honestly, I think, you know, just to speak openly, I think the biggest gift and curse that Pete and I had when we started our agency is that we bucked against niching down, because we felt that what people have termed now as design thinking, being able to bring different categories together, or, you know, Patagonia credits his success to bringing industrial design to clothing and fashion and tool making. We thought talking to many different companies, working in beverage, working in healthcare, working here, working there, would give us different perspective and teach us. And essentially, and while it did, it also stunted our growth, because if we had niched down, we would have been the best at, you know, like there are agencies that have built their entire business by working with just Diageo.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Well, that's great. So now you hit your pitfall. Rentals Online doesn't work. You move into a film and television career. You want to spend some time there?
Sure. Yeah. So then at that point, it was like, okay, I got to get a job, right? And
Mom is like,
Mom's like, how are you going to live? So, you know, I had gone to UCLA. I was still living in LA, wanted to stay in LA. And I truly love storytelling. So I love storytelling. Mm-hmm. That's my other passion for sure. And I think that's what building a brand is at its core, right? It's storytelling. So went back to my ex-boyfriend now at the time. He wasn't even my boyfriend anymore, but that's a lesson on exits, right? Like whenever you leave a relationship, leave it on good terms, because you never know when you're going to need to go back.
Keep that bridge.
Exactly. But ironically, Josh programmed Rentals Online for us, even though we'd broken up. So we were already in good.
So he loves you.
Yeah, like he was always.
You were a good person.
Yeah, we were very good. So, and I loved his whole family. And I really just didn't even know you could make money in this world. Like I didn't know that could be a job. Mm-hmm. So went back, met with Eric, his dad, and said, you know, listen, I don't know anything about the movie industry. I just know I want to tell a story. I'd love to learn about it. I think I want to work in it. And, you know, I love telling stories. So he got me an interview at CAA, at Creative Artists Agency, which at the time was the largest agency in Hollywood. Michael Ovitz.
Yeah.
That's it. And
still up there too, right?
Yeah.
Still at the top?
Yeah. So there's there's been a lot of mergers of like, no, they're right up there. I think it's WME and CAA basically are the two.
Yeah.
So he got me a job in the mailroom. He said it's a great place to start, because he actually recommended that I just go, you know, into the mailroom in general and then get on a desk and kind of figure out where to go from there. But I was like, well, what's the most coveted job, you know, in the mail? Is that the best I could do? And he's like, well, you could become an agent trainee. That's a different thing you interview for. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. Because I always wanted to do the best, the fastest, that as well. So got into the mailroom as an agent trainee, went into that program, got onto a desk, got out of the mailroom, got onto a desk, and just realized I didn't want to be an agent. I knew I didn't want to do that. But having gone through all that, I wanted to have more like hands-on experience, like touch the film more. So then I went from there to 3 Arts, which was a management production company, where as a manager, you could also produce. And then in that capacity, realized that, the people really making the stories at the beginning were the writers and the directors. So I knew I wanted to work with them. And I was not a good employee. Like, I'm not a good employee. I think that's another thing with entrepreneurs. Like, if you have that bug, you sort of naively think you know things that you don't know, you can do it better. And sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not true, but that's what's driving you. Mm-hmm. And you have a hard time with like listening to direction, and so all of that was true for me. And so I was like jonesing. Even when I was at 3 Arts, I was like, meeting with writers, optioning scripts, just doing it on my own anyway. Like, really? Kind of stockpiling stories I wanted to tell. Yeah. And then at that point, had partnered up. I had met a girl, Chesley Seals at CAA, and we're like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's go find a backer and try to make movies together. So we left a paying job, to go.
Mom.
Yeah, exactly. Left a paying job to go work with this woman, Marianne O'Donnell at the time, who had started Earthlink. Actually, she was one of the financial backers of Earthlink with Sky Dayton. And so she at this point, it was like the first .com had happened, then the bubble, but Earthlink, they had gotten out. So she'd made a bunch of money and she was looking to produce movies. So she was our backer at the time. And that just simply meant that, she was financing the development of the scripts. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't even think we were making a salary, to be honest with you. Like, I think, she was paying for our overhead and stuff like that. And, maybe we were getting a little bit of money from her because somehow we were living. I don't really remember that. Yeah. I just don't remember ever having a meal back then. Like eating wasn't something we did. I think it's like today, like with Manjaro and Wegovy and Ozempic, nobody eats anymore anyway. Like back then, nobody was eating either. But somehow, through all of that, we were able to kind of eke out a 10-year run, right, of like developing horror movies. That's what I was into, horror movies and music-driven movies. And the reason I liked both of those is because, like, with horror movies, you didn't have to worry about A-list talent because everybody dies in those movies anyway. It's really more about the concept. Yeah. That's what sells it. So the barrier to entry was lower. So we're as like unknown producers with no track record and no like deal at a studio or, without those relationships with like big financiers and stuff. Mm-hmm. How could you play in that space? How could we make a movie? And it's about like the product, right? Like depends on the type of product you're making. So we figured out with horror movies, those were based on the idea and not the talent. That wasn't what drew it. So that was a space we could play in. And so we had some scripts that were in development, which gives you a little bit of money to keep going. And man, that's the movie industry is the one industry where it's like last man standing. If you can eke it out, like get by, and somehow cobble together a living, and you can do it for years and years and stick around and be there for 15 years, you will inevitably succeid in that business.
Got it.
Because at some point it just chews you up and spits you out, and there's just like dead bodies all over the place.
Yeah.
But if you
friend of mine went into the movie business, and he was successful because he did horror movies. He was a financing guy, so he financed movies, and he went after horror movies. And this was recently, like in the last decade. And the reason why is because he got information that the one category that Netflix was light in was horror movies.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's about finding a niche and plugging a hole. Like, where's the white space? Yeah. And the other thing about horror movies is that they play well across the world, right? Yeah. Like, humor's tough. Yeah. Because like our humor is different than the UK British humor, than Australian humor. So that was like, and that was the other thing is when we educated ourselves.
Yeah.
We fully understood what moves the needle. And that's another thing with a lot of entrepreneurs that I meet. It's like they don't understand the operationally what actually moves product.
Yeah.
Right. And so you really have to think about all of that with whatever industry you go into. And so we took some time to really understand that. So it's like, okay, if we got to pre-sell the foreign in order to finance this film, which is how they do it, right?
Yeah.
You sell the foreign rights, you take that money, you make the film, and then you sell it in the US, right? And then the gravy's all those other windows, which have now collapsed. So that industry, that whole model has shifted now.
Yeah.
But back in the day, that's how you could do it. So you want to find something that works overseas. So the two things we focused on that we found were horror movies and music-driven movies, because music also works across the world, right? So, and musicians also, the great thing about musicians, they're used to performing and showing up and touring for their money. That's how they make their money. They make their money off of concert sales. They don't, in the old days, and I don't think it's changed that much, but back in my day, it was like the record label kept all the money for the record, right? And Tower Records made a bunch of that money. And the record label, but like the artist didn't really make money off the album. They made money off the touring.
Yeah.
So that's how they got paid. So they're used to working. So they're great people to go into business. If you're going to go into business with a famous person, it's great to go into business with a musician over an actor, because like, I feel like actors, they just show up for the movie and that's it. It's hard to get them to go to like even their movie premiere unless you send the full entourage, you know?
Yeah.
And then God forbid they go on like a tour, you know, a press tour. It's like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
So with musicians, they're used to working, you know?
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, great. And they have an audience, you know, overseas.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, those are two categories where they'll, you know, with the musicians, they'll promote it, and we can pre-sell it, and then horror movies you can pre-sell. So that was our focus. And, you know, we were able to do it for a while through development deals. And like anybody looking to get in the movie industry, like when you set up a project at a studio or with a network, they usually give you like some sort of a stipend as the development stipend. And then you develop it. And if it ends up getting made, then, you know, you will at some point eventually maybe make some money.
Gotcha.
It's a lot of ifs, buts, maybes, and ands.
And
But
you stuck it out there for a while.
we stuck it out for a while, and we were very fortunate in that we were able to actually make a movie, which was called Taking 5, and it exists now. You can get it on Netflix and iTunes and Apple, but this was what happened with Taking 5. It was a music-driven movie. It couldn't have been more perfectly lined up. It was so, we were very like pat ourselves on the back because we lined it all up perfectly. And then it still failed, which was it was like a real eye-opener for me because I was like, oh my God, this industry, you just can't control anything. And you really can't control artists. That was another big lesson. You cannot control artists. So this was just to place it in time. American High School Musical had come out, which was like a huge TV hit. So everyone's looking for like the movie version of that.
Yeah.
8 Mile had come out with Eminem. And what was so brilliant about 8 Mile was that the record label and the movie studio were using both the budgets to promote that because they put, his album that came out on the record label was the soundtrack. A lot of the lead tracks were on that.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack of the film. And so it was like two budgets promoting, right?
Perfect alignment.
Exactly. So I was like, this is all great. So there was a band called the Click Five. It was a real band. It was like 16 years ago. They just come out with they were a boy band, and they were, did Jingle Ball in New York. Their first album was a gold album. They were super cute boys, like 5 guys. And they were on Atlantic Records. And so we had this script. It was called Taking 5. So the real band's called the Click Five. Our script's called Taking 5. There was a band in the band that they kidnapped. So the movie was about 2 high school girls who kidnap a boy band. Mm-hmm. The band was called 5 Alive. Lots of fives. So anyway, it was adorable. And there was all this new music for it. So we did something that hadn't been done before. We pre-sold the soundtrack to the label as part of the pitch. We said, hey guys, we're going to put your band. We're going to have the real band play the fake band in the movie. Craig Hellman, who's a friend of mine, really smart dude. He's like, great, we'll finance making that soundtrack so it's good music for the film. it was an independent film with no distributor. So like normally a record label doesn't come on for the soundtrack till way later once it has distribution.
Yeah.
But in this instance, they did it because they got the concept.
Yeah.
And we filmed the movie. On the last day of shooting, I get a call from Craig and he says, bad news. I'm like, what's up? This was the last day of shooting. He said the band, once they wrap tonight, the real band is going to fire the lead singer from the band. And they're going to get rid of him, and they don't want to be a boy band anymore. They want to be a rock band. And I was like, what? We just locked the film. Like, and they're not going to let you release the music, and they're not going to promote the film because they don't want to be a boy band anymore. So it completely, what should have been
Contractually, you didn't have nothing on them.
we couldn't do anything because they owned the underlying rights. They wrote the song, so they knew, yes, they owned the publishing rights. So there was nothing that we could do. We could play the music in the movie, but we couldn't sell it on iTunes. We couldn't do anything. So what should have been,
Timing.
a great family movie
Timing.
ended up going to television. We did sell it around the world. We sold it to TV here. You can still rent it, but like we ended up losing $1 million on the project. I mean, it was like, it should have been a huge success, and it just was fully out of our control, and there was nothing that we could do about it. And of course, the band went on to hire this guy. They were a rock band. Their second album tanked. Their career was over. It was all over, but it was so crazy because it was an instance of like where reality, fiction informed reality. And because in the movie, that was the same storyline.
Yeah.
They thought that the lead singer was like trying to be like an NSYNC thing where the lead singer was going to go off with the manager, but really he was hiding this big dark secret. So it was like, it was eerily similar to what was kind of going on in the script. And I was like, are you kidding me? When he first said it to me, I was like, is this a joke?
Were you manifesting it secretly through the script?
I mean, Jesus, in retrospect. But
Lesson there, time kills all deals. I'm dealing with a situation now in a business that I'm starting, and my vision was to be first in market with a certain category of products. And we're late. We're about 6 months behind schedule because of stuff that was out of my control.
Yep.
And it looks like we're going to be first. And then all of a sudden, because time has gone by, the legislation is actually making a change to the rules in the state, a regulatory change. And that regulatory change is going to bring like 100 competitors into the market, where I was going to be one of one.
Oh, boy.
Imagine having 100% of the market share in something. And then all of a sudden, so your whole idea was exactly right. You were dead nuts on it. It was perfect. And then all of a sudden, but it just took you a little too long, which is one of the lessons that I've learned all the time as a business developer, as a salesperson, or as an entrepreneur, is time kills all deals.
It's the truth.
Yeah. So that fails, and then
Third time's the charm.
So there's a pivot. So now there's a pivot there.
Yep.
You're at Tribeca Film Festival, and you find out that you are
Pregnant.
Okay.
But I'm married, so.
First daughter?
Son.
That was your first
Yeah,
kid,
we have
though?
a son. Yeah, first child, son, and a daughter.
So you've been in the industry for 15 years at this point. You just had the most spectacular, unfortunate burnout.
Yeah.
And you decided to call it a day?
Yeah. At that point, I was like, it was sort of bittersweet. We were at the Tribeca Film Festival, and that was like a great experience, at least with the film, with Taking 5. And I just sort of sat there and thought, you know what, we're going to start this family, and we're Greek. My mom moved in with us, helped us raise the kids. And true Greek fashion, my non-Greek husband.
It's amazing. Greek people are the most amazing people in the world. Every time I go to a Greek town in an area, I'm just like blown away by like 100 restaurants. They're all the same.
Totally.
But they all survive.
They all survive because everybody's got their, clientele that comes to that one for the tzatziki or the tarama. But yeah, so I thought, this is a good time to just take a break. And the movie industry is like, it's everything. It's like every project's like having a baby. Now that I've had babies, I can say it with 100% certainty. And it was like a lot. And also at this point I had moved to New York, and again, it's like, don't force something, right? Like the industry in New York, the movie industry is very different. It's very, focused on, Academy Awards and really important films and documentaries and things like that. And that wasn't what I was making. And so I thought, you know what, my life is in New York now. This is a good time to stop. And also just as a woman, like I do really believe that you can have it all, but just not all at the same time. And I did want to be with the kids when they were little. I say to my husband, I'm like, I'm going to take defense and then you take offense with the kids, right? So like 0 to like 6th grade, which I think is right around the time that like kids are really baked and they really become like their own people.
Yeah, 0 to 6 is the most fundamental time.
Totally.
That's like the most like developmental period, right?
Yeah. And so that was defense. I'm going to keep them alive. I'm going to set the roots, and then offense, that's going to be you. And in terms of who's in charge, who's leading. And so that was our deal.
Do you still think that? How old is your son now?
So now our son he's at boarding school and he's a sophomore he's a sophomore. So he's 16, yeah.
So 16 years later, do you still think that those rules apply for women? That you can have it all, just not at the same time?
Yes, 100%.
How does that change? Because I think there's a lot of women. We have a lot of entrepreneurs. My wife is struggling with that because we have 3 children, and her career has been phenomenal. She's corporate.
Yep.
She works with Disney, so she's in media. But she strives for that amazing family balance where she's a part of the kids every single day. And I can see she likes to draw pictures in their lunch boxes.
Yeah.
And she gets on the train and she goes to work.
Yeah.
But then when I'm like, all right, well then you can quit, but we have to change our lifestyle a little bit. And
exactly.
This offense defense play.
That's right.
And she's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give up my career.
Right.
So
because if you, especially on a track like that, like once you get off, when I left the movie industry, I knew there was no way I was ever going to be able to go back to the movie industry because
you got rich and stuff.
Exactly. Start financing your own film.
Filming films about mysterious Greek men in South America.
Exactly. It's like the Thornbirds, her story, for real. But yeah, because all those people that your whole network, right? Which, 90% of business is your network. And like your whole network has now moved on.
Yeah.
And you'd have to go and meet all those people again. It's just really hard. And that's why there are so many more businesses are started and run by women than men, right? Like independent businesses because of the nature because we have to.
Yeah.
Like if you want to get back to work, you kind of have to start your own thing.
Yeah, because no one's going to accept you back.
No one's going to accept you back.
So it's running everything.
Exactly. So I knew that when I left the movie industry that when I would go back, it would be something entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
The other thing though is throughout my whole life, I've always, and I totally believe this, you are sort of who you surround yourself with. Right. You are sort of a reflection of that. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been around entrepreneurs. Even my husband, Quincy, he's a banker. Right. So he's always banking business, company side, banking company side. But a big portion of our marriage, he's been a banker and he's surrounded by tech entrepreneurs. Like we're always around entrepreneurs, but like
you're in San Francisco.
Yeah. We're in San Francisco. Yeah, exactly. But like even in college, like I found the entrepreneurs, like those were my friends, you know, even out of college, like they were always around and those were so it makes for a certain type of conversation that's happening. Ideas are flowing, like people are spitballing, like that's what we talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
when people are talking about HR, I'm like, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm allergic to fluorescent lights. That's why I can't work it.
I like that. I'm allergic to bullshit. That's why.
Exactly.
That's why I can't work in corporations. So the kids. So you have your kids. You play defense. I don't want to spend too much time on the beginning of 21Seeds, but I do think for the people that may just be tuning in to this first episode, I think it's important that we kind of hit at there's an aha moment, which I think is so impressive that we've heard about in the first episode. For those of the listeners or watchers, we've grown substantially. We have, we've hit millions of people now. I'm assuming that they have not heard your story. So it starts with a health issue.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So this is one of the most amazing parts of business is the aha moment when you just get it.
Yeah.
So tell me about that aha moment for you.
Yeah. So I was with the kids. I was at that point in my life, I was drinking wine. Like that's what I would drink at the end of my day.
To wind down.
To wind down. Exactly. Relax and unwind at the end of the day. I'd have a glass of wine while I was cooking, one with dinner.
Red or white?
I had stopped
Did you
with
not
red.
discriminate?
No, I did discriminate. And actually I find that this is the path that most people take. Like I couldn't drink red anymore. Like if I drank red, I'd get like really stuffed up and red. And so I'd moved away from red.
Did you sweat at night? Like when you sleep?
Oh my God, totally.
That happens to me.
No, well, you have to only drink 21Seeds now.
Which I have.
You've now officially graduated.
And everybody in my house loves it. My wife loves it. She's like, oh my God, like that's the only tequila she likes.
I love hearing that. That means we've done our job.
You did.
So I was now just drinking white. And exactly what you just described. I was having sweats at night. I'd have 2 glasses of wine, wake up the next morning, and I'd have a headache. Like I didn't really drink and wasn't sleeping. So
now something you enjoyed is...
Yeah, I'm not enjoying it anymore. And I've never been the person that's like looking to get drunk. I just wanted something to look forward to enjoy. So went to my doctor. At that point, I was like 35. So I was like, is this like menopause? Like, is that what's happening? Like,
just a general doctor?
Yeah, my regular doctor. And I was like, what's going on? And again, I just want to say, like, I am not a doctor. I'm not making a health claim. I'm just telling you what worked for me. So
put that in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly.
This is not medical advice.
Exactly. Exactly. So anyway, so he said, listen, you are not in menopause. And you just need to stop drinking fermented spirits. So no more wine.
He knew.
Yeah, because I think he'd heard it from many of his other patients.
Which is remarkable because I feel like most doctors would just be like, well, take this pill. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's... Yeah.
Well, I guess you're in Cali. So at this point, you were in Cali.
I was in California. Yeah, exactly.
Doctors
they care about us more.
Well, I just think they're more holistic. They
Exactly.
dive into a little bit more detail.
Exactly. So he said just fermented, so wine, beer, champagne, sake, all these RTDs like White Claws, Trulies, all those kinds of things. Those are all malt-based beverages. That's all fermented. And there's just, there's more living stuff in that than in distilled. So that living stuff interacts with this living organism and you might have some trouble. That's what I'm finding. So I'm just move over to a distilled spirit. I'm like, well, what do you think I should drink? And he said, just drink Blanco tequila. And the key with the Blanco is that it's not aged, right? Because when you put it in the barrels, and that's, I think, the problem with red wine, and that's why people move from red to white so quickly. The barrels, just the way that barrels are made, they have chemicals in them that also leach into, in addition to the flavor that comes in, same with the chemicals. Can't get that stuff out, and it interacts with your body, and then, you have symptoms. So anyway, he said, move over to Blanco tequila, and I was like, oh, I don't like Blanco tequila. Even now, to this day, I don't drink tequila. I only drink 21Seeds, which is infused tequila, which is a game changer. It's like a different spirit entirely. So went home, was not a tequila drinker. This wasn't great for me at all because I thought, I'm, again, I want to look forward to something. I want it to be amazing.
I remember you referred to tequila as a dorm room or something like that. I think it felt like college, dorm, like just terrible.
Yeah, it was like PTSD from college. It was just, I did not like it. Yeah. And I had reached my fill of it in college. So I was just so down. I couldn't even smell it. That to me was just, ugh. So I thought, what am I going to do to this tequila to just make it enjoyable? Because the minute I stopped drinking the wine, I felt better. So I knew I was going to do that. So that worked. Yeah. And again, back to, why do people change their behavior? Because it either has to make them feel better, you have to be sort of emotionally driven to get someone to change behavior. And so I like businesses based on that, because that does a lot of the marketing job for you. You don't have to do much marketing if it actually does something for real, So stopped drinking the wine, felt 100% better. So now I'm like, okay, what do I do to this tequila to make it better? I started infusing it. I love to cook. I thought I'm just going to infuse it, which is just put stuff in the tequila, let it sit, and then took the stuff out. And that's infusion, right? Same way you make sangria or infused vodka in college. So did that. It completely changed the spirit. So it was like, it smelled like the things I was, the fresh fruits that I was infusing it with. It imparted like a hint of flavor, but it wasn't sweet. And it was easy to use. It solved literally all of my pain points, right? I wasn't like trying to do math at the end of my day and like, follow some crazy ounce recipe, you know, of like this ounces and that. No one has an ounce measuring anything in their house, right? It's like, put it in tablespoons, you know? We know what tablespoons are. Why you got to put it in ounces? So anyway, I wasn't looking to make a cocktail. I just wanted something that was as easy to drink as a glass of wine. Yeah. And it turns out it's half the calories. So that was a bonus, right?
Yeah.
So, and it made me feel great. Like I literally could have...
Tequila buzz is a good buzz.
It's just, and you know what? I'd have a glass, I drink it in a spritz. Like,
Why is the buzz different?
Yeah, it's just, again, I think it has to do with the fact that it's a distilled versus fermented. It's a big deal. And I would pour it in a wine glass. So I now, that's what I drink, 21Seeds. We have 3 infusions, Valencia orange, cucumber jalapeno, and grapefruit hibiscus. Yeah, I
like the Valencia.
It's so good. And guys love the Valencia. Everybody has their favorite.
Yeah.
And then they want to convince you what their favorite is, which I'm here for. Like, I love that. I'm like, tell me why it's your favorite. And I'll drink an ounce of that in a wine glass with club soda, slice of orange. I love orange versus lime because I don't like acid. I feel like lime gives you acid reflux.
Yeah.
And orange isn't as acidic.
Yeah.
It's delicious. It's the best drink. And that right there is 59 calories. It's half the calories of a glass of wine. Yeah. And you can have 2 of those and you're good to go.
My wife likes putting like rosemary sprigs in it and like dressing it up and making like cocktails out of it for all of her friends, and they all fall in love with it.
Exactly. We call that a seed and soda bar. That's how we entertain. So if you come to my house, I'll put out, you know, the 3 infusions of, you know, the 3 21Seeds bottles, bunch of club sodas, and then like a charcuterie board of garnishes, and just let people make their own drinks. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's super fun. People do what they want, and it's very Instagrammable, which is the name of the game.
So you did this.
Yes.
And then I remember, if I remember the story correctly, not to steal the shine, but
no, I like this. It's a good test.
We have, and I was going to listen to it on the drive into Manhattan today, and I didn't because I had to take phone calls the entire time. So I have to go back off my memory. Your friends started to come over your house, and they all started to fall in love with your concoction.
Bingo.
That's what it was.
That's right.
And they started to ask you to make them bottles.
That's right.
And before you knew it, you were like, I think there's something here.
Right. That's exactly it.
And then at what point, what was the tipping point where you decided, I'm going to chase this?
Right.
Who was there a person?
Yeah. So basically what happened was, I was making this, right? And then I was noticing it. My friends were like, hey, you're making your tequila. Will you make me a bottle? Will you make me a bottle? And the feedback I was getting from my friends and people, and this is all we were drinking. And by the way, Dave, this was like 9 years. Mm-hmm. This did not happen overnight, right? Like for 9 years, I was just making infused tequila at my house.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because I was raising the kids. Like I hadn't handed the kids over to the offensive coach yet. So I was still in charge of them. So even with that, you know, I still hadn't seen, you know, I hadn't had that aha moment of like, oh, this is a business. Because I think with a lot of entrepreneurs, it becomes like you're kind of talking to yourself and you kind of believe the hype because, of course, all my friends were loving it.
Yeah.
Right. Like they were like, oh, this is so good. It's so easy to drink. And hey, I made this margarita and it was like a skinny margarita. I could just use this and 21Seeds with like, well, what is 21Seeds now with just a splash of simple and a splash of lime. And so they were coming back with all that kind of feedback, which was really cool. Yeah. But, you know, that's like 20 people. Yeah, exactly. Does not a business make.
You want to get people that don't know you.
Exactly. So I still wasn't like, oh, this is a business, you know. But what I was noticing was like when I was at the bar, when I was out at bars and stuff, at that point, the big innovation in tequila was, you know, sipping tequila. Yeah. Right. Like, and basically the entrance at that time, like say Casamigos, they were all being marketed like sort of scotches and whiskeys. Yeah. To the male consumer, to like a male drinker, like a whiskey. You sip it, right? Yeah. And they were really high price
bottles, $1,000.
Exactly. Really high price points and all of that. And so that was the innovation. What I noticed though is my friends were drinking 21Seeds as a spritz. Yeah. They weren't sipping it. They weren't pouring it on the rocks. They were literally drinking it as a spritz. Yeah. And so the use was different. Yeah. And then when I was out at bars and I'd listen to what the people were ordering, consumers, not my friends, other people, guys even, right? They were like, hey, can I get a tequila soda, 3 limes? Can I get a tequila soda, splash of juice? So I wasn't really hearing like, hey, can I just get a tequila on the rocks?
Yeah, very few people do that.
Yeah, very few people do that. So
I always immediately think psycho.
Yeah, exactly. Follow that person into whatever they're going to get into.
Yeah, that person's going to be fun.
I know.
Super fun.
It's a psychopath. It's a different kind of path, but hey, they're on it. I like that for you. So anyway, right? But so I was like, whoa, here's what's being marketed, but that's not how people are using the product.
Yeah.
They're using it as in this way, as a spritz.
Yeah.
And so nobody was speaking to that. And I was noticing that it was girls were ordering it more than guys. Right. Yeah. And I think for those reasons, same reasons my girlfriends were switching, right? They would come to me.
Women love tequila.
Well, they would come in, they'd say, hey, listen, I'm not drinking champagne or wine anymore. I'm switching to tequila. Will you make me a bottle of infused tequila? Right. And the guys I knew that were switching were moving away from beer, right? Because they didn't want the carbs and stuff and the gluten, and they were moving over to tequila. So there was a lot of people were switching for wellness reasons. Yeah. That's what they were switching for.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to just switch and be like on a diet or for what. So so it's like, that's not even.
You got to bring the excitement back.
You got to bring the excitement. It's like, it's a different occasion. It's a different way to drink it. And so, but drink it as that. And so basically, once I saw that, and I kept seeing it over and over again, I was like, oh, there's something going on here. This is an opportunity. And then I went into the tequila aisle for the first time with that lens and sort of looked in to see what was there. And it was really like the sea of sameness. Like
is this like year 8? Or is this like year 7?
No, like year 8 or 9.
So let me stop you there for a second. I will come back to that moment. I just have to ask, because as I talk to you today and I've talked to you in the past, I'm so curious. How did you shut off that entrepreneurial spirit that you have, that desire that you have to play defense?
Good question.
Is it off?
No, not at all.
Like, I'm going to do this baby thing.
Constantly. Yes.
Okay.
Good question, Dave. 100%. Again, I was surrounded by entrepreneurs, right? And so I was in these conversations all the time.
Yeah, your husband's selling you.
Oh, totally.
Stuff,
and people that were over, like our friends, everyone's doing startups. So there was a part of me that was like serious FOMO, right? I was like, oh, I want to get back in the game.
Yeah.
But I was able to deal with that with just having the conversations. And so for me, it was like every conversation, I just was like a sponge. I just wanted to learn it. I wanted to learn the mechanics of that business. Like, tell me about like a dating app. Tell me how do you charge? Like, how does it work? How do you acquire new customers? Like, I just wanted to know all of these things. I've always been a very curious person. And I think those are entrepreneurs, like lifelong entrepreneurs. You can't ever shut it off. Like, you just have to get it where you can get it, really. Right. Yeah. And that's what it was.
So you got your fix from that. And
exactly.
Domestic engineering.
Exactly.
Because
exactly.
As I listen to you, I'm just like, how the fuck did you stop?
No.
I can't even like fathom it talking to you, but
no.
I get it. So you had it because you had this drip.
And you should do coffee with us in the mornings. My poor husband's like, oh God, here we go. Because now, since we've sold it, we can think about other things too. And so he's just like, what is it this morning? It's like coffee talk. We always get together for coffee. That's our time together. It's like in the morning over coffee. And so I'm like, okay, here's what I'm thinking about. He's like, okay, here we go.
So now, so now we'll get back to your story. So now you're seeing this is year 9. What was the tipping point? When were you like, I'm going in?
Yeah. So once I noticed this trend of how people were drinking it, I went into the tequila aisle. I saw this sort of sea of sameness. Again, just all these bottles being marketed like scotches and whiskeys. We tried everything. We didn't invent flavored tequila, right? We perfected it.
Because you go to the Caribbean, there's people that do flavored rums.
No, and flavored spirits in general, right? I find most flavored spirits to be overly sweet, kind of have this weird aftertaste, like just like a nickel, and have a Jolly Rancher smell. So this was like, perfecting the product was key. Yeah. And so we saw that there was this space and nobody was making really an infused, elevated, really good product of flavored spirit. And in this case, tequila. And then also just in the consumer, again, going back to a very focused consumer, I was like, okay, I know a bunch of moms that's who I hear it from the most. Yeah. The person coming into the category is the mom, and I'm a mom. So like, I know this person and I know what her pain points are, and I want to just solve all her pain points. I know where she discovers brands, and I'm just going to focus on moms. That's the focus. It was women, but even more so like moms, right? And no one was speaking to that consumer in the tequila aisle at that point. So now I had this idea, went to my sister, who at the time was the CFO of Angel List. So she had a full-time big job. And
big job.
Big job.
Angel List is Naval, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So
you knew the people.
Yeah. And then Sarga, our other founder, was an engineer at Stanford, Indian engineer at Stanford. There you go. Check the box. So
you were an engineer for a bit too. You were just at the
yeah, exactly. So asked them if they wanted to do this. I said, "There's this white space." They had been drinking my tequila. They loved the product, and so we did it. And we said, "Okay, let's do it." And we knew nothing about the industry, right? None of us came from.
Did
spirit.
They completely quit, or did they
No.
job it, like side gig?
Side hustles. So they both had other jobs. Nicole had a very full-time job. Sarika had a part-time job, and I was still with kids. So, and I was the one really like focused on the product in terms of like these were my recipes, but Sarika knew how to scale that.
Yeah,
she did that in food already.
Yeah.
So she had the expertise to do that.
Yeah.
And bring it from kitchen to shelf. And my whole thing was like, if it's not going to be as amazing as it is in my kitchen, I don't want to do it, because, and that was it for me. That was the line. It had to be delicious.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's about the product.
Yeah. Quality
right?
matters.
Like quality matters. So.
And it's definable.
Exactly. And so we basically, we spent the next year. Yes, this was 2018. We spent the next year, early 2018, January of 2018 was when I actually said it out loud to them. And then it took a year to develop the 3 SKUs. And again, we just looked at like, what are the most common tequila cocktails sold, right? Margarita is the number 1 cocktail sold in the country. 65% of all drinks sold in the United States are margaritas.
Yeah.
Still to this day.
I love margarita with salt.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, what's in a margarita? It's got an orange liqueur. So Valencia orange makes sense. We'll have a Valencia orange.
Yeah.
21Seeds.
Margaritas.
The cucumber jalapeno for the spicy, and then grapefruit hibiscus for palomas, right?
Yeah,
those are the top 3 drinks. So we weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. We were like, what's already happening? How can we improve upon it, make it more efficient?
How come you didn't go after RTDs?
So interestingly, we did want to do RTDs back, and we would have been really early. We would have been like before High Noon and all of that. But focus, right? You only have so much money. And to bring just 3 SKUs to market at that point was an undertaking.
Got it.
And we thought we'd start, because that was also like a better margin. It was like, and RTDs were so new, but we were going to go into RTDs for sure. Like that was always part of it. We even had seed and soda was our call out, so we were planning to go for RTDs at the onset. It's just that we weren't in business that long before we sold. Yeah. So we didn't have the time really to like roll out the RTDs.
Got it.
But anyway, so we launched the brand in California in April of 2019. So 1 year later, we launched the brand.
Well,
and immediately it really just had good product market fit.
How did you fund it initially?
Initially, the 3 of us put in our own money.
Self-funded.
Yeah, self-funded initially, and then we raised 2 friends and family rounds.
So I know a lot of that story. So thank you for that beginning story. I'm going to skip a bit because people can go back to your first episode, which I definitely suggest doing. I remember pieces of it.
Totally.
So you had a completely female-founded brand, self-funded by the females, by the founders. I remember you went to Mexico and you found agave, like high-end distillers that were females.
Yeah. So we found a distillery that was predominantly female. It was female-owned and predominantly female-run.
I remember that. So you kept it there, and you made a product that, while it wasn't exclusively for females, it definitely was a dominant category for females. It was definitely a lovable thing for women. And then we met. You were distributed. You got picked up for distribution by Southern.
Yeah. Nationally,
which is one of the biggest in the.
They're the biggest.
They are the biggest.
They are the biggest.
And they gave you 9 states to start to see how you were going to do. And obviously, we know the story from there. You kicked ass. What was the transition from raising money, running the business by yourself, and now being with the biggest company, I'd imagine it wasn't like, were you dealing with a lot of females in that organization, or was it mostly males?
Yeah, no. So two things. So first, we had that national distribution deal. I think in year 2, we got our national distribution deal with Southern. They came to us and said, hey, we want to distribute you nationally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was really cool. And that allowed us to like really scale when you're going after like the chains, especially, which was what we were doing, because again, that's where she shops, right? Yeah. Like we weren't trying to make her go across town and find this bottle in some remote, like small liquor store. Like she shops in the chains. That's where we need to be.
Total Wine.
And so they helped us to be able to do that at scale. Mm-hmm. And then we sold to Diageo, right? And so interestingly, at the distributor level, it's definitely more men, right? Because they're the ones out there selling it. At the Diageo level, there are a lot of women at Diageo. There are a lot of women. And that was part of the reason we chose Diageo, was because there was such the female leadership. There was a lot of female leadership at Diageo. And they really, and because the way it works, it goes, Diageo then sells the product to the distributors distributors sell it to the retailers, and then ultimately you buy it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So we know it's a very male dominated industry, right? Especially at the distributor level. So Diageo is not the only buyer that wanted to buy 21Seeds. There were multiple people that came and made us offers to buy 21Seeds.
Nice to be a hot girl, right?
It was,
it was double entendre there.
Felt great. To be wanted. So anyway, so we had, multiple buyers. One of the reasons that we chose Diageo, there were 2 big reasons we chose Diageo.
Yeah.
One is they are the leaders in tequila, right? They own Don Julio, they own Casamigos. So we thought in this industry where the incumbent has a lot, it's kind of like AI now, right? Like the incumbent holds a lot of power. Mm-hmm. It's good to be with the brand that holds the power, right? Mm-hmm. So they were the strongest tequila house.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be, they're the biggest.
Yeah.
Diageo's the biggest spirits brand in the world.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons we chose Diageo, even though the deal we got ultimately up front wasn't as great as what we could have gotten. We chose it because they were the biggest. Mm-hmm. And so we thought ultimately our brand would be the biggest. Mm-hmm. Because they could use that power to help that happen. And then number 2, there were women at the top. There were a lot of women, the people that brought us in, they were all women.
That's good.
And so they really fought for us. So we thought if they fought to buy us, they're going to fight for us, in the trenches when push comes to shove and we're not in those rooms and we can't speak for ourselves and fight for ourselves. They're going to fight on our behalf because they're women.
What was that process like, start to finish? Like, how long did it take for you? Like, when people started to come to you to court you and going through the process, you obviously doing your due diligence?
Yeah, totally. So because it was such an innovation and it took off really quickly, and because our business was in the chains, and the chains have a tracking system, Nielsen. Mm-hmm. So you get on the lead. If your business is in the chains, you're on the leaderboard. So versus they see you right away. You're like, whoa, who's this, person moving? What's this brand that's moving up pretty quickly? Yeah. So because of that, by year 2, they were coming.
Yeah.
But actually, I'd say after 18 months.
Which is crazy.
People were coming. Yeah. And I think also the business had changed in terms of just how the big guys were acquiring. Before it was like they really wanted you to be further along, but now with the internet and social media, brands are happening so much faster. Yeah. Trends come and go.
Yeah, Tito's on your hands.
Exactly.
You can't buy it.
Exactly. So they were onto us really early on because the consumer was finding it, and it was like, especially for that female consumer, 21Seeds consumer, even today, is 80% female, which is unheard of for a spirits brand. Yeah. That's what you see in wine.
So
and champagne, right? They're like, what is this thing that women are loving? Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing. People drink 21Seeds the way that you normally in the world of spirits. Like someone buys a bottle of, say, Tito's, 1.5 bottles a year for the house. That's it. It's not that much. It's kind of like the New York Times bestseller. It's not that much to get on it.
Yeah.
But it's just a bottle and a half a year for the whole year.
Tito's like wine and that.
But for us, our consumer, 17% of our consumer is drinking a bottle a month.
Yeah, that's.
And 23% were drinking a bottle every 2 months. So it's like almost half our consumers were crushing that, you know.
So your shelf,
our rate of sale was insane, you know. So because of all of that, you know, they came quick. So, and I think that's how successful brands kind of catch fast.
Was that distracting to you? Or were you welcoming it? Did you want to get out?
The buyers coming that early, it was it was sort of double-edged sword. It's very distracting. It's very going through like a sale is it's like going through an audit 24/7. You're like just being audited constantly while you're still trying to run your day-to-day job.
Yeah.
And a day-to-day job for a company that's growing really fast. So it was a lot of work. Yeah. But in fairness, my poor sister, Nicole, who's our CFO and our CEO, she did so much of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Right? It's very distracting. And also, just for life balance,
financial.
Yeah, and before you go into that, it's so important to like tell your support system that you're going to go into hell.
Yeah,
like it's going to be really rough. So everyone's like fully. I think like being happy is about setting realistic expectations. And so if you think, okay, we're not going to go to dinner tonight, then no one's disappointed when you don't go to dinner tonight. But if you say you're going to go to dinner and you bail on dinner, then everyone's pissed.
Yeah.
So we knew, and because Nicole was at Angel List. She's done so many transactions.
Yeah.
She's like, this is how this is going to go.
Yeah, she knew.
And she laid it out for us, and it went just like she said it was going to go.
And what was the timeline was what to what?
So it took a year of diligence, before we closed the deal. So what was crazy was like from the day we started, the day we launched, to the day we sold, it was 3 years from start to finish.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And
what a run.
And it was such a run, and it was the biggest exit ever by a female-founded spirits company in the history of spirits.
That's amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing.
Shout out to my friends Uncle Nearest, though, because they're now on paper bigger than us for sure, but they haven't exited yet.
Who is it?
Uncle Nearest. It's a great whiskey brand owned by an awesome woman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Get her on the show. She's had, I think, other exits. So get her.
Make an intro. I'd love to. So now I ask this question to everybody. It's become a thing. When the wire drops, right? When the contract is signed, when that first wire drops, obviously exits are all, you know, sometimes they're cash, sometimes they're stock, sometimes they're cash and stock, sometimes they have earnouts. I'm not interested in the dollar amount. It's published, obviously, we know. But that when the deal was finally done, that moment, what was it like? Where were you?
Yeah. Oh, totally. I totally remember. I was, at my house in San Francisco. I will tell you the first, honestly, like the first thing you think about are your employees, because they were like family for us.
Yeah.
They really, really, and we all like, we aren't together anymore. Only, ultimately 2 employees came over to Diageo after we sold.
Mm-hmm.
And now one of them's not there anymore. So just there's one left that I work with. He's on the brand team now.
Mm-hmm.
And we all still like ping each other and get together and like text, and we go to dinner together, and we just say that it was like so magical, because it was, right? Like,
yeah, it's unheard of. 3-year run.
Yeah. It was just so, everything was so aligned, and everyone had their own swim lanes. It was just like, it was such a perfect group of people. So that the first thing was like, okay, let's just make sure they're okay. Like, we want to make sure that they end up in, at first we thought that a lot more of them were going to be able to come to Diageo, and ultimately they weren't able to come to Diageo, which was like a real disappointment for us, just because of the way I think that those companies are structured. Mm-hmm. So that the jobs don't line up the way that you would think. So the immediate thing for me was really like making sure they all ended up in great places. And so we worked really hard to make sure that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that. There was no like, I'm going to Disneyland, I'm going to buy a Ferrari, like none of that. Like, there really wasn't any of that. Like, I don't think we bought anything. Like, I don't think any of us, the 3 of us, didn't buy anything. It was sort of like, we were like, okay, we want to like, now we have this huge distribution network. Like, we have all these resources of Diageo. Like, let's go. Like, it was still like LFG,
Yeah.
And we were gearing to go. And so, so there was like 2 years, we're now 2 years into the deal, of them owning the company. Now we're sort of settling into the pace of Diageo, which is definitely a slower pace than when you're on this, rocket ship that's a startup.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm like, what else is going on out there? Like, now my entrepreneurial little devil inside me is like rearing its head, and it's like, okay, what's next? Like,
we often talk about the fact that entrepreneurship is a mental health disease.
it is. It's
Because I saw the greatest, I'm making a piece of content about it right now. The greatest video, Elon Musk is getting interviewed, and he says, it's really not fun. He goes, there's moments of fun. He goes, but when you run a company, you get the worst problems on your lap.
Yeah.
He goes, that's your job, is to you get a distillation of the shit.
totally.
And he goes, it's really not fun. He goes, there's moments of it. And the way he described it, and he often does it because he's so brilliant, that he just describes it. And I was like, that's it. That's why my stomach's been fucked up for 6 weeks.
Totally.
And it's incredible like that. So,
But on the flip side, like everything's on the line. So when you get the wins, there's like no better feeling.
Yeah.
You know, like when we got into Whole Foods nationally, when we got into Target nationally, like those wins, like you kind of want that feeling again.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about a startup. And, you know, I always joke with Nicole, is like, once we get to EBITDA, like hopefully we're done. You know, like nobody wants to get to EBITDA. There's nothing fun about EBITDA. Like, it's about the growth part that's so fun, and like learning a new industry, and like, you know, really like understanding what like moves the needle. And that's the stuff I'm obsessed with.
I love that. And thank you that's my favorite word, is obsessed. It's like a romantic, it's like same thing about I think the movie industry is romantic. I think entrepreneurship is romantic. It's a dance. It's careful. Sometimes it's slow. So I know a buddy of mine who we had on the show, Josh. You know, he ran a business for 20 years. I remember just a few years ago, he was like really stressed out. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, he has a 10-figure exit. And he's like, you know, he's in his 40s and he's chilling. And he's like, it's almost like 20 years and then it's happened. And in your case, it's completely opposite, where it's just like a absolute rocket ship and still romantic in its own ways. I do have one question. I know we're getting late here in the thing, but there's something I have to ask you. If you start something again, how do you make sure you build a special team? What are you going to do to make sure you get that special team? Are you going to go back to the same people, your sister and the other woman, or are you going to try, or you think it might be different this time?
Yeah, I think that, I think I'll always work with my sister, because I mean, we're family, and I trust her so much, and she does a part of the business that I never want to touch.
Well, let me ask you the question differently then. Yeah. Giving advice to the people here that are watching and listening, that don't have a sister at Angel List, that don't have the network. Yeah. How, if you had to start from scratch and you didn't have her and you didn't have this other woman, how would you ensure that you get that same special magic team that you clearly had in this rocket? Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing I would do is find people that do things that you hate to do, right? Like separate swim lanes is so important. I think that's why we were able to run so quickly, right? Yep. Like, so find experts in that space, right? And have that be something you don't love to do. Like I never had access. I was the CEO of 21Seeds. I didn't have access to the bank account. I never looked at the bank account because I had Nicole looking. She did that, and she did it, and I trusted her. And she was really, really good at her job, though. I knew that. And so that saved me a lot of time. Like I wasn't involved in those like bottoms up build. She did all of that. And I would just call her, be like, are we good? And she's like, we're good. But it's because she was an expert in that. Then I had a salesperson, like my head of sales. Like I said, okay, what's going to move the needle? I need somebody who can sell me into the chains. So I went out and found a person who does just that and is obsessed with wins and winning and knows how to make the ask and knows how to make a sale, you know? And I'd rather have it. And so I'd find people that are experts and truly know how to do the thing that you need them to do, right? Because like we're dealing with that right now with ambassadors, right? We're hiring ambassadors for the brand at Diageo. And there's a bunch of people out there who have a lot of relationships at bars and with bartenders and things like that, but they don't know how to make the ask. So it's like, that doesn't help me. That doesn't move the needle. You know, everything has to ladder up to like, what is actually going to move the needle and sell bottles of tequila or sell the product that you're trying to sell. So first and foremost, they have to be really, really good at their job. And then, so then I think with culture, like I think about that more than anything else, because if you're pulling your weight, then people respect you. And you don't have to worry as much about like personalities. You know, I don't get caught up in like personalities too much. Like if you looked across the board at this team that we compiled, I don't know that any of these people would go to dinner together, you know, outside of work, but they were all really, really, really good at what they did. And so everyone had respect for each other. And that made it tick. A lot of people get caught up in like, oh, it's a culture and we ought to play ping pong together. Like, yeah.
I hate that.
No. You deliver, and you know, you can't hide on 5 guys on a basketball court. You can't hide. No one can hide. And it's a small team. No one can hide. So you have to deliver. So everybody can have respect for each other. And that makes it hum, right? And then through that respect, you get to know people. And then personalities and things like that and friendships develop. And all of these people, like, they love each other still. That's what I would do. I'd find like,
Perfect.
But something that moves the needle, not just like, oh, I have this experience. Like our people didn't have spirits experience. Our best salespeople came from pharmaceuticals. You know, you can teach somebody what they're selling.
Corporate people don't realize.
Yeah, they don't realize that. They hire from within. Oh, no.
It's like, oh,
No, we're trying to get them to do that now. We're like, hire from outside the industry, you know?
They won't do it.
Everybody's like, even in marketing, it's like, oh, have you done spirit marketing? No, I've done everything else, but I can, you know, I know what moves the needle.
Exactly.
You're 2 years out as an exclusive. What's getting you excited right now? What category?
Okay. And you know, it's all about coffee for me. I'm obsessed with coffee. So be on the lookout. You know, I always say, you know, to the team, right? Like, or my inner circle, it's like I wake up for my coffee and I look forward to my cocktail at the end of the night. So it just makes sense that I would end up in coffee. But yeah, I have many, many thoughts on coffee and
I'll tell you,
I'm exploring
offline. I'll tell you a little bit about the 2 biggest coffee brands and what the biggest hits were for those brands.
Yeah.
In the meantime, if people want to follow you, social media, stuff like that, tell the people we have this camera.
All over the place. Yeah. So my Instagram's Kat Hantas, although I'm not like too prolific on that, but follow us on 21Seeds for sure, because we will have amazing summer recipes for you guys for all summer long. I'm still very involved in all of that. So definitely follow us at 21Seeds. And then of course, go out and buy some 21Seeds for an amazing summer. It's rosé all day the new way.
I love it. Well, with that, thank you for blessing us on the show with a second appearance post-exit. So excited for you to have done that. Your energy and spirit is awesome, and your take on business and your love for business is incredible. And we really appreciate you sharing that with us and the show. And for those of you, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel that you're watching us on, and don't forget to stay forward obsessed.
Thank you for listening to Forward Obsessed. Please share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast app. If you have feedback or suggestions for our next guest, visit us at forwardobsessed.com. If you want to dive deeper into every interview, subscribe to our Substack at forwardobsessed.substack.com. Also, find us on Instagram or TikTok at forwardobsessed to see all the best moments from every episode. This episode was produced by Robert Roach from District Studios in New Haven, Connecticut. If you would like to learn more about the team that makes this show possible, visit digitalsurgeons.com.